There's a new sheriff in heavyweight town. Oleksandr Usyk made a successful debut at the higher weight, and now he's gunning for Joshua, Fury and Wilder. This is After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's brand new boxing show in association with Betfair.
Hey, it's the WBA heavyweight champion of the world!
Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
The Mirror brings you After the Bell in association with Betfair.
Welcome to this week's edition of After the Bell. I'm delighted to be joined once again by Declan Taylor, and also delighted to be joined this week and hopefully in the future by George Groves, former super middleweight world champion. George, great to have you on the show. Obviously, it's almost a year now, well, about 9-10 months since you retired. How is retirement?
It's good, thank you. Yeah, I definitely can't complain. Still enjoying it. Still happy with my decision. It's nice to not have that pressure. That pressure of as a fighter, the clock is ticking and you have to stay on it with everything in life. But so you have to be very disciplined. And now I can afford the odd luxury and the odd time off and do fun things like this. So I'm very much enjoying myself at the moment. Definitely no regrets and no itching and urges to come out of retirement anytime soon.
Because boxing is quite a bad sport for people retiring and then coming back because they just miss it. You have the routine for most of your life, every day in the gym. If you're not preparing for a fight, you're taking over. Has it been at all? I know you said you don't regret it, but has there been any point where you thought, I do kind of miss it a bit?
No, not yet. I mean, I'm in the gym. I do like to get to the gym still and I train, but not boxing training. So I'm thinking of everything else that I can do apart from boxing training. If I come back boxing training, I'm terrible. It'll just make me upset. So I was at the Boxing Writers Awards this week and I was sitting next to Jim McDonnell, and he was talking to me about retirement, and he said he came out of retirement after 7 years and it was a big mistake. And that's all I keep hearing is fighters who come out of retirement and they always live to regret it. So yeah, I'll take their advice and happily stay retired, I think.
You must have got the urge though.
Hey, I mean,
here and there.
I mean, it hasn't been long enough, I suppose. I still feel like I'm in that lull between fights. Where you get that 3 weeks off of just being carefree. But at the moment, no, genuinely not. It just takes so much work to get in a position where you're sort of happy in. Like as in fighting fit, and it sort of got longer and longer, and more things sort of was thrown in the mix, fight on fight, year on year as my career went on. And now, we've I haven't thrown a punch in over a year now. Absolutely no incentive to get back to that sort of shape, which I wasn't even in the best shape in the last time I fought anyway. So yeah, it's going back even further.
I mean, it's actually unusual for someone, a boxer, to retire. I guess at the peak, I know you had an injury, obviously struggling towards the end, but you're not old. Probably the youngest one on this panel here. It's unusual for a boxer to actually decide, right, that's it, I'm done, and then stick with it. But you've always, I would say, been quite aware of your own career. You managed yourself for part of it, so I would say you're probably one of the more sensible ones.
I hope so. I mean, it's hard to walk away from opportunities, and you work your entire life to get those opportunities, and sometimes they come right at the end when you don't even really want them anymore, but it's too hard to say no. I made mistakes and I had to rebuild from them, and they took a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of toll on myself and my family and my close ones. So becoming a world champion just became the primary goal, and when I finally achieved it, it was like, what next? So I had a couple more fights after, a few more defenses, and then a couple of injuries along the way. They weren't injuries that would force me into retirement, but it just meant going back to the drawing board as such and rebuilding, and I just couldn't be bothered. I mean, I'm lucky that I got to a position where I don't have to fight. I didn't have to fight anymore. But I genuinely think that I won't look back in a few years and think, I wasted that time. I should have got back on the horse, knuckle down, get fit, get healthy, get back in the ring, because otherwise you'll just be permanently chasing it. I mean, just looking at the current boxing climate from even a year ago when I retired, so much has changed. If I'm allowed to say it or not, the super middleweight division is kind of wide open now. There's it's up for grabs. No one's really claimed it. It's not as exciting as it was a little while ago, the super middleweight division. So there would be that sort of that reason to think about coming out of it. But Yeah, I just can't be bothered to make the weight.
What happens if Jim McDonnell, as you were saying, you were speaking to him the other day, what if he calls you up and says, George, I know what we were talking about the other day, but my boy James DeGale's back in the gym and we could get a lot of money for this fight. We could do it in Saudi. we could pay you an absolute fortune. Would you do it again?
You never say never.
For that fight?
Never
that
say
money?
never. I mean, any excuse to dust down with James DeGale, I suppose. But yeah, they are the temptations that you got to sort of factor in and make an educated decision about. You know, there's a lot of money floating around now in boxing. Sort of, you get to that stage now where, big fights. People are happy with the nostalgia. Do you know what I mean? They don't mind seeing two fighters who are, maybe not at their peak, but they've got a rivalry that's worth seeing. Spent a little bit of time with my old pal Cole Fox recently, so you never know. You just never know. But right now I can say no. Never say never. But as long as I clear my tax bills okay in time, then we'll be okay.
Saudi can help with that.
Yeah, well, so emigrate maybe.
You could always wait 20 years and just do a Nigel Benn and still be hearing.
Yeah, I mean, who am I to criticise Nigel Benn? But it's like it is crazy. Like what gets him up in the morning and thinks at his age I still want to have a fight. I mean that's the thing that leaves you as a fighter, is that urge to fight. You're still in it because you want the fame or the accolade or the money or something like that. But the desire to fight will always leave you. That's why nemesis, as time goes on, they soften. Tyson Lewis and guys like that. They don't look like they've got a fibre of their being that still wants to have a fight anymore. But they still get in there and they'll do it. But Nigel Benn at 55, I think he is. Who knows? We'll see. Sakio Beaker as well. It's
a hard fight.
It's a hard fight. I don't know what Beaker's got left. He's obviously old. I think I'm assuming he's coming out of retirement. I don't know.
Yeah, he's been, but he only boxed like 2 years ago. I think he boxed the world title 4 years ago.
Yeah, so he's got it all to do. Look, I don't know. I don't know if I look forward to it or not. Be interesting to say the least. But yeah, wait and see. Connor, starting to make his way. Conor Benn, the son now, in the pro ranks, and might be a little overshadowed now by his dad's comeback. So hopefully he use it to his advantage, capitalise on it, and get some big wins in.
Well, boxing's loss is very much our gain. Next up, we'll take a look back at the weekend's fights in Ring Review. Josh Warrington marches on again, another successful defence of his featherweight world title against Sofiane Takoucht at the weekend. George, probably one of maybe Britain's most popular fighter at the moment. Josh Warrington commands a crowd.
Yeah, definitely within locally within he's bigger than just an area, isn't it? In Leeds, he's a massive draw, massive draw, and now an established world champion. He's had a few defences. He's kept all them fans on side. He's gained more, and he's right up there now on top of the pile. In his division now, you can't really dispute it. There's a lot of jostling, isn't there, with the fighters and around those weights going up, maybe going down. But great performance from him. What he needed to do, went out there. He's he's a physical guy. Throws an awful lot of punches. He must be really strong for the weight. And it just looked sort of like man and boy. Like once he started landing the shots, just overpowered his opponent and got the job done really well.
Declan, almost a lose-lose situation for Warrington in that fight. If he'd gone the distance, people would again questioned his power, but he got it done quickly, and really that's all he could do on the night, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're right, because I think that was just like only his 7th stoppage or something. He's not, but looking at that, he's not a massive puncher, but he flew through Takoucht, who'd never been stopped before. You ask Carl Frampton about Warrington's power, he says the hardest he's ever been hit. So I think it's because of that volume and that pressure. Maybe he's not setting his feet and really unloading with the right hand a lot, but he obviously did on Saturday because he knew he could. But how often have we seen opponents like that come over and the champion just be a little bit flat, maybe fiddle through it, get a bit of stick? So it was the perfect night for him. Wasn't the opponent he wanted, wasn't really the opponent anyone wanted. And I think Warrington now, you mentioned how popular he is, he's approaching sort of national treasure status. In this day and age where no one can get on, no one can agree on anything, the way he pulls things together up there is amazing. And hopefully now he starts getting that wider exposure. That opponent is not going to help him beating that opponent, but the way he did it will. He needs a big fight next, obviously. He's only 28 as well. Seems like he's been around a long time, but 28 is reasonably young. He's got a fair few years now, and it feels like he's really hit his peak. Big credit to his dad and his trainer as well, the way he's got him, how fit he is, the style. Obviously, they worked on that, beating a southpaw like that. They must have drilled it, and he did it to perfection. So I think now he's coming to that point where he's just got big fight, big fight, big fight. Hopefully, loads of money for him, and then he can retire like George did, walk off into the sunset happy.
I know fighters have to say before the fight they're not taking it. They're not sort of, up for a fight. They have to be 100%. Doesn't matter who's in front of me. But other times there must be times where you think, you know what, I'd rather not be fighting this guy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Warrington. I watched the previous fight against Kid Galahad, and I've got to be honest, I thought Galahad did enough to win that night, and they gave it to Warrington. So, he was on this meteoric rise, and then he faced Galahad. It was question marks over the decision. He probably had to read some comments that he wasn't comfortable with, and therefore that adds to the pressure, of the next fight. And he's in there with a southpaw that no one really knows an awful lot about. So as you say, you beat him. He can easily just go under the radar, but he didn't. He went out. He got a real good win. He let his hands go. He showed power. He doesn't necessarily plant his feet and throw the snappy, slashy shots. That's known for like big punches, but it is volume. It's volume, and he definitely digs his feet into the ground. And from a solid base, he can let his arms go, and he's got a fantastic engine. And it's the accumulation of punches. So you get hit with. I mean, even the knockdowns there wasn't one punch knockdowns. There was accumulation of the pressure that he was building, and then the combinations that were putting him down would be 2, 3, 4 shots. And if you're going to punch accurately, you can only take so many on the gloves. The odd few are going to creep through, and then when one goes through the guard, knocks your head back, and you're getting hit with 2 more before you've even got your head back into position. It's a tough night's work. No one, I don't think anyone in the division would look forward to fighting Josh Warrington, just for the sake that he's now proving just how strong he is and the volume of punches that he throws.
One thing, Declan and I spoke about this before the show. We're struggling to understand why these fights are on so late. So it was 11:15 by the time they got in the ring. It could have been 12 had the fight beforehand. Is there a reason beyond wanting to keep people in bars as long as possible? But like from a fighter's point of view, do you want to be fighting at 11 o'clock at night?
No. I always used to like, if you're main event, I always used to like the 10 o'clock ring walk. I think it was around 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30 by the time the first bell goes. And if I had quite a few Chief supports on the pay-per-view shows, and that was even better sometimes because that had the solid time. It depended on how quickly the Chief support went to when the main event went in. But sometimes there's shows where the main event don't sell that many tickets, so they have to flood the undercard with ticket sellers, and then just pushes the main event start time back late. But that's not the case with Warrington, so I'm not exactly sure.
Do you have any sway as a fighter? Can you say, I'm not fighting any later than 10?
Well, it depends on your relationship with the promoter, and just sometimes the logic of the the TV production people. I had a lot of rows with the World Boxing Super Series because they wanted a 5 p.m. weigh-in, and I said, "You're killing us, guys! Like, I'm fighting a guy who's 6'4". I'm pretty sure he ain't making the weight so easy, and I definitely am struggling to make this weight. Can we not have a sensible 12 o'clock weigh-in or 1 o'clock weigh-in, or do a mock weigh-in and do a fake weigh-in? At a suitable time. No. More people are tuning in Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. They're on YouTube at 5 p.m., which is 1 o'clock Eastern or something else. And this is the important thing. It's been made by the top rank, people. And there's no compassion for the fighters, really. I'm not sure, by the time the show finished, Warrington show at the weekend, how people were going to get home, stuff like that. It always has to be factored in. I remember years and years ago, before I even turned pro, David Haybox, Enzo Macronelli, I think that was 2 o'clock in the morning to match US TV schedule, and so there's always something that sort of takes precedent and has to dictate. But then you come out of the O2 at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, try
It's
getting a
long
cab.
walk home. Yeah.
No, but I remember being at a show when the main event hadn't even started, and the MC came on and said, "Just so you know, the last tube leaves in 2 minutes." And it was like, "What? We haven't even had the main event yet." And also from like a UK perspective, that 11 o'clock, half 10, 11, the casual sort of sports fan in England is basically going to watch Match of the Day, aren't they? So you're thinking, right, maybe what shall I watch? I'll just stick Match of the Day on. You're going to miss the boxing if you're in that sort of grey area of whether you can be bothered to watch it or not. So it's hard to. Is it for America? Maybe are they hoping just the later we can get it, the more people, because we know they hate watching boxing in the afternoon in America. But you think that half an hour is not going to be critical. But luckily, I say luckily not for Sophie and Takouche, but it was a stoppage, so people weren't hanging around too late. It wasn't 12 rounds and leaving at midnight. But it's just it's crazy, really. I'm not sure what happens.
Well, that takes us on nicely to a fight that was even later on Saturday night, as Oleksandr Usyk made his heavyweight debut. Obviously, he's supposed to fight Tyrone Spong. I think we now call it an adverse finding in the drug test as opposed to failing it these days.
Yeah, but he did say that he's had it back in his clear now. I think we should say that. He said the third one came back everything negative, so
okay,
good for him.
Corrected. So instead, Usyk fought Chaz Witherspoon. Declan, did we learn much, or did we just see, was it the same Usyk, just 15 pounds?
I don't know. I think we learned a lot. I was astounded really by the negative response for it, because like we said before, even against Tyrone Spong, he wasn't against a world beater. He wasn't expecting, we knew it was going to be his heavyweight debut, see what he looked like, see what he weighed. I thought Witherspoon was actually decent considering he was a 3-day late stand-in, and he did his bit in the fight. Usyk did what he did. People going, he's got no power and stuff. It's, go and ask Tony Bellew if he's got power. He doesn't, with his style, he hasn't got to have that one punch Deontay Wilder sort of power. He's clearly volume, combination puncher, moving around, southpaw, in and out with the feet, like no other heavyweight really. That little sort of amateur step back and in again, you don't really see that at heavyweight. That's going to cause a lot of problems. I thought it was a fine performance, and he filled out that arena. I think it was a total sellout in Chicago, which is very good for a Ukrainian. I thought it was a very good night's work, very handy for him. Got it out of the way. He'd also been out of the ring for a year, so there's a bit of ring rust. Witherspoon played his part, did land a couple as well. So if it's Wilder hitting him with that, or even Joshua, Dillian White landing those sorts of shots, would he be able to hang in there for that long? Who knows? But that's the amazing thing about Usyk. He doesn't seem to care who he's fighting. He's going to take one to give one. So it's got to be exciting times watching him.
Definitely. Enjoyed a different kind of heavyweight. We've got, I know obviously Joshua lost to Ruiz, but let's take Joshua, Fury and Wilder, big guys, 6'7", 8+. Usyk, smaller, brings a completely different dimension to the division.
He really does. I mean, heavyweights now, there's two types of heavyweights. In the modern era, you've got anything really over 6'4". They're just too big to have the boxing ability that the smaller guys have. So barring maybe Fury, who's 6'8", 6'9", but has no muscle mass. He's got skinny legs and he moves agile, but he doesn't. He still doesn't have the same pedigree that someone like Usyk has. Who just come through the amateur system in Eastern Europe, Ukraine. Just won everything there is to win, and as a professional, it's just straight away in the mix, unified. The cruiserweight division. I think in like less than a dozen fights. Yeah. For me, I got asked who's the best heavyweight on the planet, and I'd throw him in there. I wouldn't argue against it, because this was the first fight that he's had in a long time where it was a soft touch, really, when you think about it. He come from winning the world title into the World Boxing Super Series, where there was all tough fights, and then the Bellew fight, former world champion. Bellew was coming off the big wins against Hay. So, and this was supposed to be a soft touch against Witherspoon, who comes in last minute. So he just had to go out there and do the job. And this will be what you're going to see, I think, from Usyk. So hopefully no one gets frustrated with him, because there's lots of it is just the setup, which the boxing purists will always appreciate. So it's he's just rattling off the shots, and then he wants to put the 1, 2, 3 hard shots together when the target is there in front of him. Doesn't waste nothing. He's happy to let sort of rounds go by. There's nothing anxious or about him, which I appreciate. You see fighters who there's a lot of tension in there because they feel like every second matters. I need to get him out of here right now. But Usyk knows that he's a 12-round contest. He's light years ahead of Witherspoon at this stage, and the shots will come, and they did, and it was a good decision, I think, to pull him out at that stage. He was starting to take shots, and Usyk was really just having his way, letting his hands go. But a great start to heavyweight division. I don't think there's any question marks over him at all. Will he go on to compete, against the top guys? Sooner rather than later, I'd like to say.
Well, we will play matchmaker next with both Warrington and Usyk and look ahead to what's next for them. So with victories for Josh Warrington and Oleksandr Usyk, we're going to look ahead to what's next. Start with Josh Warrington. It looked, Declan, before the fight as if it was win this, next stop, America. But maybe now after this, it's more likely that he'll be back at Ellen Road. Maybe not till May. It's quite a way away.
Yeah, I don't think it will be America next for him, based on the opponents, really. And can you believe it? Sounds like he could be the one, because Chinese currently got the WBA regular belt, but if Santa Cruz clears off, I assume they'll just elevate him and he'll get the super belt, and then it's a genuine unification. So then they could sell Ellen Road on the back of that. I don't really know his situation in terms of being a draw in China. From watching his fights, they seem like they're pretty full, so he must be a star over there. Very good fighter, good. Also likes to come forward, doesn't look very good going backwards, so it could be great for the fans, that fight. One would assume it would be easy to get him over here based on what they were saying on Saturday, about it could be Kanju and, let's get him over here. So I would think that's a very good bet, and I think it justifies that short price. You would think just timing-wise, he seems like the most natural fit, particularly if they're going for Ellen Road. Yeah.
So Kanju 6-4 with Betfair for Josh Warrington's next opponent. We could have, George, another fight. We talked about Kid Galahad fight before. He's now got a final eliminator even to have another shot at Josh Warrington. A fight. Do you think Josh wants to have that fight again at some point, just to make sure that everyone's completely clear that he's won it?
I think from what I've observed of Josh's character, I think he would, but maybe not the people around him, maybe not the promotional team, because Galahad, he's a tricky night's work, and sometimes that cannot be a fan favourite to watch. But he came real close the first time. He might do better the second time. So I think the next one down, Frampton, 5-1. I think that's probably more likely to happen. Frampton, he is supposed to be fighting in the States, I think, soon.
Yeah, November.
So maybe he gets that out of the way. He stays on winning track, and then they'll be much more confident with that fight. I don't think Frampton's quite the formidable force that he was, and definitely up at feather, it's not quite the same. I think he was shocked just by the strength and the volume of punches again by Warrington, and it's a big fight, and that probably does sell better than the Galahad fight, even though there's a slight controversy with the first fight. But I'd head for bets with that.
Okay, so Kid Galahad 4-1, Carl Frampton 5-1, Shakur Stevenson probably the other option. Declan 6-1.
Yeah, that's a good one, because he's boxing Joet Gonzalez, I think, in a couple of weeks, a week on Saturday, I think. So that's for the vacant WBO. So then they'll be looking for a big one after that. I guess looking to unify. He's with Top Rank. The whole link up there with Frank Warren at the moment seems to make sense. I think it's not an easy fight for Stevenson now. I'm sure he's going to go on and become like a real superstar. That's how they're sort of mapping him out at the moment. But Joet Gonzalez is a very good fighter. So if you think that Gonzalez is going to win that fight, 12-1 as the next opponent for Warrington would then be a very good bet. That if you think he's going to beat Stevenson, then the likelihood is he'll then fight Warrington next year. So if you fancy Stevenson to get upset in that fight, that's a good bet. But I just think timing-wise, I'm not sure they'll turn it around quickly enough. So then it opens the door for Kanji or someone like Frampton. For me, like I said last week, Stevenson's got a big problem against Warrington at the moment, because he's never faced anything like that, particularly if they can get him to Leeds. I wouldn't expect they would. I'm sure they have to go to America for it, but that would be an amazing win for Warrington, and I wonder whether they might steer Stevenson away from him for now, just based on that. He's obviously very young, but
does seem keen though, Stevenson.
I'm sure he's keen, but he won't be the one calling the shots in terms of who he's going to be fighting, and they might look at Warrington and think, wow, no one really knows him that well in America. Why would we put him in against that? He's that man strength, he's experienced, seasoned. Even just that style, Stevenson won't like that very much. So I wonder whether they might steer him away from it. Hopefully not, because then we get a good unification. But yeah, considering we don't really know what's happening with the other belts, the BO and the IBF sort of link up looks like it could happen reasonably soon. But whether it happens for the next fight and make some money on it, I'm not sure.
Okay. You had a great shout last week. I think, well, we don't know yet, but hopefully Oleksandr Usyk to fight Joseph Parker next. And it looks like that probably will happen if you look at this. So Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz is going to fight in December. Whoever wins that is going to have to decide between IBF and WBO mandatories, so Kubrat Pulev or
Joseph Usyk, yeah.
So one. So, and if you're being sensible, you take Kubrat Pulev, probably is the better option, which leaves the WBO vacant. And at the rankings at the moment, Usyk, Parker. George, is that a good, probably the best chance Usyk, well, easiest chance he has of a world title at this stage, you would think?
It's definitely the quickest, and I think that's probably the most important for him at this stage. Parker, I think will cause a couple of problems for him because he knows his way around the ring. You know, he's got a good record, and when he's up for it, and he's definitely one of them fighters that he needs plenty of notice. You know, because he's coming from so far away. He's probably got so many other things that he needs to get in order to get his head right for a fight. Obviously he's pulled out against Chisora this week. Maybe there's something that's going on in the back, out the back as well. But I think that's a great fight. It's a good fight to watch. You know, there'll be a lot of skill involved for a heavyweight contest that you won't necessarily see. You know, otherwise. Pulev, yeah, I think something's got to give. The winner of Ruiz, Joshua will look at Pulev as an easier fight. Usyk's now with, I'm assuming he is with Matchroom. He's fighting on DAZN. Yeah. They'll want to develop him and build his profile before putting him in with, say, if Joshua won. So yeah, this is a much more logical route. And you go through the rankings of WBO. It's Parker's name that comes up, isn't it? So.
Could be the most convenient spider bite in history. Might have to go and find the spider, give him a cut, because if you miss a horrible hard fight like against Chisora and go straight into a world title fight, as a result getting bitten by a spider, like I don't want to cast aspersions, but that is handy, isn't it? If you're going to then have a few weeks off, get the plaster off, put a bit of ointment on it, and then straight back into camp for a world title fight against Usyk, that's happy days. And based on what Eddie Hearn's saying, it sounds like the WBO is the one that they'll drop if Joshua wins. I mean, again, who knows? He's got nothing to do with Ruiz. If he wins, who knows what happens there? Yeah. But that's a good price, I think, for that Parker Usyk next opponent.
It does mean, of course, that we'll probably see a fragmentation of the world titles again. It's almost as if the unification, the undisputed champion, may even be further away than ever before.
Well, yeah. But I mean, it's no bad thing, because it's not like we're blessed with hundreds of heavyweights. Like, really, if one belt goes one way, then it means you've got an opponent down the line, haven't you? If you've got a new champion, someone holding the belt that you need to complete the set, then you can go to them. It just ekes it out a bit longer, and there's more fights, more anticipation. We knew that they couldn't hold them together for very long. Yeah. Kubrat Pulev seems to have been mandatory for something for about 10 years. Yeah. So surely he's got to get a shot pretty soon. So it's not ideal. We all want to see one champion, and I'm sure it will happen eventually, but it just means, hopefully, if we've got meaningful guys with meaningful belts, it just means they'll be brought together at some point, which is really what we want.
Skinny odds on Usyk to win a world title next year, 10-11 with Betfair, but probably, I mean, you'd fancy him at this time next year. We'll be talking, as long as he hasn't lost, obviously, we'll be talking about him as a world champion.
Yeah, I think so. You never know in terms of how the governing bodies navigate, and whether a new rule crops up somewhere where someone doesn't have to vacate, or there's an exception put in place or something like that. But I'd imagine if the WBO does become vacant, he definitely will win it.
Does it matter as a fighter what version of world title? There's so many different versions. There's 4 as it is in the separate bodies, and then there's at least 2 probably in each one after that. Does it matter to you?
The one you got is usually the best one.
Well, you had the oldest one, didn't you? You had the WBA.
I had the WBA, yeah. But I mean, there was disputes that I didn't actually win a world title. I suppose I don't even want to shine light on it right now, because I had the super belt, and there was basically 2 WBA world titles floating around at my time. It was created. I think it was created when Andre Ward had the WBA, and he couldn't fight because he had contractual issues or maybe an injury or something. So a clever promoter, probably Kalle Sauerland, he's always very good at these sort of things. Cropped in and we'll get a new belt. And then, I quite like the fact, to be honest, that there are plenty of belts out there. I'd like there to be one major world title at each governing body, just so we know which way we're going, and we keep it to 4, not let it stretch to 5. But they did the World Boxing Super Series, and Usyk went in, all the belts went in, and he completed boxing. That's the problem you get, is like everyone wants these big fights, and then Usyk now has to move up a division. Do you know what I mean? He's like, well, I've completed it, and nothing left to do. So, what do you do if you're a heavyweight and you get all the belts? I don't think it'll ever happen again.
Really?
I just can't see it, because when as long as the heavyweight division in particular is thriving, there's lots of different fighters out there at the highest level who can compete against each other. They're always going to be signed to different networks, different promoters, and it's going to be very difficult to get them all in one place at one time. It would take something like a tournament, like a World Boxing Series to get all the best fighters in. The money would have to be astronomical, because people just want to know what they're going to get, and then we might come out with one big winner in a tournament situation. But I don't think it'll ever happen, and I'm a little bit happy about that, I think.
At what point do you sit down as a fighter and go, that's the route I want to take? Or does that not really happen? How long in advance does that process begin?
Well, so for example, Frank Warren's got a fantastic relationship with the WBO. So usually most of these fighters get ranked with WBO and end up fighting for WBO world title. Al Heyman has a great relationship with the IBF and with WBC, and therefore, his fighters might end up going down that route. Kalle had a really good relationship with WBA. I was with Kalle at that point, ended up fighting for WBA. So it's usually
based on your promoter.
It's kind of like, the promoter will be nudging the governing bodies, going, keep an eye on my guy, keep an eye on my guy. And that's where you get the rankings. And then when the opportunities come, the phone rings and you're ready to step up where you go. The one that's a little bit more by the by, and they always keep number 1 and 2 slots free, is IBF. So you have to sort of fight your way into that position. And if you're already in there, then at some point the mandatory situation will come up and you get your shot. So it's great when you're not a champion to go down the IBF route, but then once you become champion, it's the opposite, because then you sort of like your mandatory's thrown at you, and you many a time you see a unified champion have to vacate his IBF because he's been thrown a mandatory, and it's getting in the way of another big potential fight.
So your first fight against Carl Froch, that was IBF mandatory, wasn't it?
So IBF mandatory, and
but
he had a
WBA
WBA as well.
So was that a design thing? Did you go, Carl Froch is there, I reckon I could beat him, let's go IBF so I can get the shot? Or did it happen a bit more organically than that?
No, I was ranked across the board at the time. I was playing the field. I was boxing on Sauerland shows. I was boxing on Matchroom shows. I just recently, not that long, left Frank Warren. So I was kind of ranked with all the governing bodies. Probably the lowest rank was with the IBF, but they went through the rankings. The mandatory was due, and I think 2 guys ahead of me were tied up, and then 2 other ones were fighting each other, and then it come down to me at like number 5 or something. And do you want it? And they probably thought I'd say no, and I was like, yeah, I'll have that, definitely. I'm ready to go. So obviously Carl being a double world champion, WBA and an IBF, both the belts were on the line. So it was he's all done all the hard work for me to gain.
Excellent. In the final part, we'll take a look ahead of what's coming up this weekend. So we're in Newcastle this weekend for a genuine 50-50 fight between Lewis Ritson and Robbie Davis Jr. We talked about Josh Warrington being a popular fighter. Lewis Ritson, he sort of came unstuck a couple of fights ago, but again, in the Northeast, love them, don't they?
Yeah, it's a great draw. It's good for that area because they haven't had a lot to shout about boxing-wise really over the years. But he lost a bit of momentum when he lost. Obviously, that's what's going to happen. But he moved up in weight, rebuilding, and then he's taken a big fight. And I remember they clashed backstage at a show. That's always handy. People are looking forward to this one. Robbie Davis Jr. as well, very good fighter, more established at the weight. In Newcastle, so you sort of have to favour Ritson. I think he's a very slight favourite. But yeah, it's a great fight. It's a good Saturday night fight. It's exactly what you want. You know, big British domestic clash. It's great fight.
Too few Saturday night fights, really, George. I mean, pay-per-views obviously exploded in recent years. It's actually rare to have a fight. I mean, Sky obviously not quite free, but to have a fight on a Saturday night that you don't have to shell out another £20 for.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you loved us paying for the
yeah. No, when you're pay-per-view, you don't mind, but when you're not, it's hard to part with that £20. But no, it's a great fight. It's a great fight. It is a pick and fight, you know, which is what you want. And up in Newcastle, you know, it's going to be a great atmosphere. Ritson's a big draw still up there, and he's you know, he's sort of down to earth and he's relatable, and that's, I think, was, you know, captured the public's imagination for him. But he's got Robbie Davies Jr. is a very good fighter. He's as you say, much more established at the weight, and I didn't know about the to and fro backstage, which always adds a bit. It adds a bit of excitement for, you know, for the casual fan, but also it'll add a bit in the prep. Maybe, you know, if that is genuine, then they've each got a point to prove, and they want to go out and do the job. So I'm really looking forward to it.
But with that in mind, you know, that little bit of needle. Is it important to keep a lid on it? Because I'm thinking, again, your professional fight with James DeGale, you totally kept a lid on it, and you had a game plan that was very to the point, and you went and executed it and won the fight. But if you let emotions and that little bit of needle overtake that, can you come unstuck a bit? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, that whole camp, the James DeGale camp, was my apprenticeship on controlling my emotions and staying focused, like concentrating. Literally, I had to concentrate for the entire camp because I knew I had to concentrate for every minute of every round, and you know, you want to win every battle. You know, like every time I do plenty of face to faces with DeGale in the build up to that fight, and you want to come across how you believe is the right way to, you know, to be seen, to be heard, to give you that confidence to go on and win and put doubt in your opponent's mind. It can be a real tough job, and it can sort of get the better of you sometimes, you know, and not necessarily always on fight night where you lose your emotions. You want to just really hurt the guy and you walk onto a silly shot, or you get exhausted through being over nervous or even over excited. It's staying focused in camp, you know, doing your job properly, because it's not always effort that wins a fight, you know, or desire or anything like that. You know, it's always, you know, work hard, stay dedicated. That's the mantra, but there's a lot more to it than that. So it makes it interesting. I always like that when there's a slight knowingness about each other. You know, I remember covering Dubois against Nathan Gorman, and they found out that they'd done hundreds and hundreds of rounds together in sparring. It's like they must know so much about each other. That makes this fight so much more fascinating to me, because you know, you might have your assumptions about the outcome, but maybe they know something we don't. You know, I always knew something James didn't, so always took pleasure out of that.
As we said, a 50-50 fight. Ritson, the slight favourite, 4-5 with Betfair. Robbie Davies Jr. available at evens. Both identical records, 19-1. So,
what's the price on the draw?
That's a great question. 20-1.
Really?
And you love a draw, don't you?
I'm just saying, look, a fight like that where they're very evenly matched, although it is in Newcastle, so you'd think that if it's close, it would go Ritson's way. But who knows? A draw in this sort of a fight is a good one, unless you can see. I mean, Lewis Ritson's a big puncher, but Robbie Davies Jr. knows what he's doing. He could stay out of the way of him, and a draw in this sort of a fight at 20, it always seems like a mad price to me. So yeah, a couple of quid, it's got to be worth.
I just want to touch finally on Tyson Fury. Obviously, had his win, had his cut. Deontay Wilder next year has always been the plan, but he's now going across to Saudi Arabia again. WWE. I mean, obviously there have been critics. There is concern about the cut opening up, but it seems to me, George, like a perfect opportunity to market himself again to the American audience anyway.
Yeah, and to get paid. You know, like I appreciate Tyson Fury, but I feel like since he signed with ESPN and Top Rank, he's sort of been treading water now. You know, biding his time. He wants the heavyweight division to sort of sort itself out and be much more clearer before he steps up and makes a move. So, you know, the Wilder fight was sort of announced, but there's so many fights in hand before then, and he's had two fights now. Two you know, on paper were gimme fights. Although the last fight, you know, he got a real bad cut and he had to dig deep a little bit in that regard. But this wrestling move makes perfect sense, you know, because they're really pushing hard the salesman side of and the entertainment side of Fury. And if you say something enough times, you believe it. And now it's come true. He's in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure he'll have a great outfit. Some great catchphrases, maybe even a couple of wrestling moves, and it's just another dimension to his game. He is one of those fighters out there that does differentiate himself from the rest because he comes up with these fantastic ideas to be that bit different, and I appreciate that. He done it. It was much more below the radar at the start of his career because he didn't have the profile he has now, and then he got a bit of backlash because he was a lot outspoken and sort of said some silly things in the past. But now he's reined it all in, and he's gaining much more notoriety and popularity without fighting than he is from fighting. So it's good luck to him. Good luck to him.
Martin, do you know if the lineal title is going to be on the line now?
I'm sure something will be on the line.
That's a great line. Isn't it? Yeah. I thought it was Rocky Marciano, to be honest.
Yeah. He never lost.
Who else could it have been? That should be what we should go through and have a look.
Yeah, there's a few breaks. There's a few breaks.
There must have been a few since.
Yeah, Lennox Lewis another one.
Yeah.
But great, I think also for Tyson, his struggles are well documented. He probably doesn't want to be sitting around.
Keeps him busy.
It keeps him busy. He's got to learn. Listen, I'm no WWE expert and a wrestling expert, but he's going to have to learn something. He's only got 2 weeks, I think.
It's got to be risky, though, isn't it, for the cut?
Oh, definitely.
It was a horrendous cut, and it wasn't.
And it doesn't look
was that,
particularly
like a month
healed.
ago or something. And it's not like there'd be no contact.
No.
I mean, that would be a real shame. But hopefully, he comes through and the cut's okay, and then he can start sparring with it, sort of back to close to full strength, and then.
The cut might have been that got him the gig though. Do you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
love a bit of blood in the
that's true.
WWE, and maybe that's all part and
They're
parcel
gonna
of the
open
contract. They got to open it up.
Yeah.
Getting hit with a chair. The cut is back. It's scandalous, but it's all above board because it's factored in timing wise, recovery wise for the challenge against Wilder. So who knows?
Excellent. Well, thank you very much both for being here. That's all we have time for today. We'll be back next week, of course, to look back at the action and to look ahead to a great card, actually. Josh Taylor, Regis Prograis, and Dirt Soda, David Price.
No Joseph Parker.
No Joseph Parker. Thank you very much for watching. We are across social media and, of course, at Mirror Fighting.